Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. It is 6:30 p.m. And this is something that it was a pretty slow news day tonight. I mean, in terms of the nonsense that people are, I feel like the what's it called? The world is going to shit all around us, and I feel like I'm the orchestra or the string quartet on the Titanic playing Nearer My God to Thee as the ship sinks, where it's like, there's nothing we can do. Let's just keep people entertained until everyone dies. So, I'm not saying that I'm entertaining people, but, people listen. So, those of you out there who are watching the world slowly burn around you, and it's possible the world is going to come to an end, here we are. I've been hearing a lot of people like, oh my god, nuclear war is coming. I don't think nuclear war is coming. And if nuclear war does come, I'm fucked. I live in a soft target or a hard target. I don't know if it's a soft target or a hard target city, New York. But, either way, I'm within the nuclear fallout range, so, that'll be fun. Maybe me and my second Siamese head that comes from the radiation will be able to continue podcasting. Anyway, let's talk about the Batman. Batman's coming out on Thursday. It is Tuesday, and we are about 40 minutes as of recording this away from, or 20 minutes away as of recording this from the first test screenings, not test screenings, but audience first screenings, which I took as a sign that the movie may have problems, because it's one of those things where it's like, if the, I'm still spitting out, what the fuck is that? Something flew in my mouth. If the studio has faith in a movie, they typically don't do these screenings, I've found. These screenings are more designed to generate, audiences everywhere love the Batman kind of TV spots, where it's like, they want people to go out, see the movie, and then tweet about it, Facebook about it, go on, Rotten Tomatoes and give a review on Rotten Tomatoes about it. That's what this is for. Typically, they don't need to do that if the critical response is going to be strong, because the critical response will speak for the movie. Or they do this for smaller budget movies, like if we look at Shazam had screenings like this 2 weeks in advance. I saw Shazam 2 weeks in advance because of this, and it's designed to get the word out. Gifted had screenings in advance of the release. I got tickets to see Gifted in advance, and then went to the theater to watch Gifted in advance, and then it turned out that because the way the link was set up from GoFobo, it was like anyone can go in and get tickets without capacity of the theater in mind. So I get to the theater, and a bunch of people from college had all decided to do the same thing and be like, oh, well, we're going to all go and see it. So they gave everyone free screening, and I went to see Logan instead. Sing Street, which we covered early. Sing Street had a very similar thing where they had advanced screenings, and they were like, oh, well, they want people to go and see the movie, talk about it. And Sing Street, was great, and it's a smaller, lower budget movie. Shazam was great. But typically when they do these big event things, my first thought is, oh, they don't have confidence in the critical response of the movie. Critical response has been great, though, so far. It's got a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes, and the movie is, hailed as the best Batman movie since The Dark Knight, which sounds like a lot of praise, but when you take into consideration what's come out since The Dark Knight, there has been one explicitly Batman movie since The Dark Knight, and that was The Dark Knight Rises. There was also Batman v Superman, and I, take that as you will, that being another Batman movie where it's like, some people really love it, me not so much. Did not particularly care for, Batman v Superman. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I go back and forth on it, where I see Batman v Superman and I'm like, oh, well, it's, it's good, it's bad, how do I feel about this? I don't really know. It could go either way. It genuinely is one of those things where it's like, it truly does depend on the day and how recently I've watched it. Where I remember watching it the first time and I was like, holy shit, this movie's not as bad as everyone's saying it is. But yeah, I feel like right now it's like if I went and watched it, I wouldn't be like, holy fuck, this is the best. It's not as bad as the critical response. I feel like that was a lot of it, was the critical response was awful on Batman v Superman, and then when I saw it, I was like, well, I was expecting a much worse movie. Like, I was expecting, like, Fantastic Four, which was, like, that movie was, critically dragged through the gutter, and then the movie was, not awful. Like, so, like, do I think that, like, it's necessarily a huge ringing endorsement that's the best movie since The Dark Knight? Not particularly, considering that, like, okay, what you're saying when you say that it's the best movie since The Dark Knight is that the movie is better than the, it's better than The Dark Knight Rises, and better than Batman v Superman. Because Justice League isn't a Batman movie, and, like, yeah, he had a cameo in, but that's not really a Batman movie either. What was the other one that he had the cameo in, where it's like, Suicide Squad, he had a small cameo. And it's like, okay, cool. It's better than Suicide Squad? Is that the hill we're gonna die on here? Like, I'm not saying the movie's bad, but I'm saying that that's, something else that I'm seeing a lot of. And it's like, well, what does that mean for me, the viewer? What does it mean to say that this movie's the best one since I know that it's, if they said it's the best Batman movie, it's like it's the second best Batman movie, that means a lot more than, it's the best Batman movie since that one. Like, saying it's the second best Batman movie would be a much better way to put it than it's the best one since the best one of all time. And hands down the best one of all time by a substantial margin. Like, because, like, The Dark Knight Rises, I don't have fond memories of, and if you asked me to tell you what the plot of The Dark Knight Rises is, I couldn't tell you. Like, I couldn't sit there and be like, oh, well, here's what happens in The Dark Knight Rises. I watched that movie when it came out. I don't think I've watched it since. No, I've watched it, like, twice since. I still couldn't tell you what fucking happened in that movie. And it's like, that's not a ringing endorsement for it. My bigger problem with The Batman has nothing to do with any of this, though. And the fact that the movie hasn't come out yet feels like I can freely say this and not be immediately attacked for it. I have a problem with AMC designating this movie as an artisan film. Because it kind of goes against what the mission of the artisan film was when it was originally laid out and when the artisan film program started in 2019. People forget, the artisan film program started after Endgame. Endgame was the catalyzing event where we now have AMC designating the artisan film and giving it and what it goes along with. The point of it is to give additional screenings to movies that are smaller budget and people may not have heard about. It's like when it first came out, it was like Downton Abbey, the movie, was probably the biggest artisan film, quote unquote, that came out of this program. But besides that, it was like Loose, which was really good, and then there were a few other movies that came out in that time period where it's like, okay, these movies need to have this push of having this label so more people see it. But then when movies like The Batman get this label, and I know Joker got this label too, which at the time I was like, alright, right on, it's like 20%, it's like I want to say the budget for Joker was like 20 million, but like, even if The Batman's budget is 60 million, they're putting a fuck ton of money into marketing. Like, I don't think it's an artisan movie when there's a tie-in with Little Caesars, having a pizza shaped like a fucking bat. You can't say it's an artisan movie, I don't think, anymore, and do that. And then the other thing is, we're calling it an artisan movie. It's coming out in the middle of Oscar season. And I looked at what movies are playing before The Batman comes out, and what's coming out after The Batman comes out, and there are a bunch of movies that are genuinely artisan movies, that are small budget, and, from an independent studio, or from an independent thing. We picked up a distributor at a film festival, and it's like, right now, The Worst Person in the World is playing at my AMC, and that is a movie that is nominated for Best International Film. It is I think his name is Joachim Trier, is the name of the director. It's his third, movie, getting a lot of acclaim. It got nominated for Best, it was Best Original Screenplay too. It got nominated for, and I believe, and it's, it is supposed to be a really inventive take on the romantic comedy, and it is, currently out in theaters. It is leaving theaters to make room for The Batman. There are other movies, too, that are leaving theaters to make room for The Batman. And look, Sing 2 leaving theaters, I can understand that. Scream leaving theaters, I can understand that. But the fact that they're forcing out, like, there were screenings of The Godfather for the 50th anniversary. Those are out because of The Batman. Butter, which was in theaters for a week, is out of theaters because of The Batman. Cyrano has a drastic amount of theaters, like a step down in the number of theaters because of the Batman. And if you look at like the number of screenings that are lowered, it's because the Batman is playing on like 5 screens because the movie's 3 hours long. At least when Endgame did its 3-hour-long movie and it came out, it was not Oscar season. When we get these reissuances of movies that people missed out on. And it's like, people didn't see West Side Story when it originally came out. Now West Side Story is up for 7 Academy Awards. Yeah, it's going to Disney Plus this week. Or it's going to Disney Plus probably today. Or tomorrow. But, the ability to see these movies in theaters is part of what makes the Oscar season so important. Nightmare Alley, yeah, it's on HBO Max. But if the point of this is to try and drive people to the theaters to see these movies and to kind of preserve the low to mid budget movie, giving the Artisan name to the Batman just as it's directed by Matt Reeves, and it appears that Warner Bros. Let him do whatever he wants, even though Matt Reeves was told you can't make it rated R, which he wanted to do. It kind of feels like you're kind of shitting on what the Artisan Film tag stood for when you set out to make it. And I'm not saying that you have to sit here and not, because I don't think giving it the Artisan label gives this movie any additional screenings or anything like that, because I think it's getting the same number of screenings it would have gotten if it didn't have the Artisan label. All it does is give it the gold banner, which makes it feel like more of an indie, and it gives it that look where now someone can go and see the movie and act like they've seen some kind of high art. It's still a fucking Batman movie at the end of the day, in the same way that Joker is still a movie about the Joker. And it still features, at the end of it, I have to watch Bruce Wayne's parents get shot. It just kind of feels like we're living in a situation where it's just easier to they just put it in these labels to make it seem like, I feel like there's a DC fan who works at AMC and makes these decisions and is like, yeah, this is an Artisan film. It's like, if we want to say that, the movie is entirely the vision of the director, and it happens all the way around, and that's the vision of the director, and that's what qualifies a movie as the Artisan Film, quote-unquote, then shouldn't Eternals have gotten that label as well? Because regardless of what you think of the Eternals and how it is, if we look at other movies that have gotten the Artisan label since the Artisan label has been a thing, if we look at that, Eternals should have definitely qualified. Because, like it or not, Eternals is still 100% the artistic vision of Chloe Zhao. You can sit here and be like, oh, it's a Marvel movie, but yeah, well, the Batman is still a DC movie. And if we're going to sit here and say that, what qualifies it as an Artisan film is that it is the creative vision of the director. Well, Chloe Zhao made that movie, and Chloe Zhao did what she wanted. And it's even down to introducing Blade at the end of the movie. That was her. Apparently, the original thing they wanted to do was use Sam Wilson. And they wanted to have his Captain America show up. But no, it's Blade who shows up because she loves Blade, and she wanted Blade to be the one who's there. Even if Blade's not on screen, but it was her idea to have Blade be the one who was there. Everything that happened in that movie was her idea. The fact of the matter is, you can watch that movie having not seen any of the other Marvel movies, and it works the same way as having seen all of the Marvel movies. I know Artisan wasn't a thing, but wouldn't Logan have been considered an Artisan movie? If Logan gets reissued, does it get the Artisan label? If A New Hope were to be re-released, does it get the label of being an Artisan film? Because it is literally the biggest budget indie film on the planet. It was independently produced. It had nothing, they didn't have a production company making, Lucasfilm didn't have the backing of a studio. They got a distribution deal from Fox, but it is the biggest budget indie film ever made, and most successful indie film ever made. If Clerks got it, or let's not use Clerks. I feel like Clerks would definitely get it if it got re-released. But if Yoga Hosers got re-released, would it get the Artisan? Because it was a very low budget movie, and if we look at that, but the Batman gets the artisan label, like, that feels fucked up to me. And the fact that it's like the Batman and Joker have gotten it. But, like, you know, movies that have been the entire creative vision of the director from other major franchises doesn't, feels like it's a decision made to back one studio over another. That's what it feels like to me. And it feels like it's entirely a status thing and entirely designed to create the feel that it's like, okay, this is the artistic vision of this director because this studio cares, the other studios don't. And it's like, well, that's not the case, because they very obviously let Chloe Zhao do whatever the fuck she wanted in Eternals, like it or not. Like, that was not something that was like, you know, like, you can't watch Eternals and feel anything but, oh, she did what she wanted in that movie, and she did, you know, exactly what she was going to do. There is no other way to read that movie besides this is Chloe Zhao's movie. And that's not a bad thing. Like, you know what, we sit here and it's like, you know, auteur theory, I feel like auteur theories, first of all, it's a bunch of bullshit, because to say that it's one person's unified vision on any movie is a load of shit, because there are so many moving parts in a movie. Like, there are costume designers, production designers, you know, yeah, there may be a fundamental idea of what things look like, and there will be coordination with the director, but the idea that it's only the director who does the entire thing, and filmmaking is not a collaborative process of a bunch of different people from a bunch of different departments all working together to make one movie done, it's a load of shit that is designed to reinforce that. But the fact of the matter is, it's like auteur theory, where it's like we don't second guess, like, you know, when we watch, you know, Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's like, well, you know, well, why didn't he make it two parts? We didn't sit here and second guess every decision that he made in that movie, and it's like, because, well, that's what he wanted to do. Okay, great, that's what he wanted to do. Well, why are we sitting here and micromanaging the runtime of Eternals and micromanaging everything that happens in the Eternals when it's like, well, that's what Chloe Zhao wanted. That was her idea for the movie. She wanted to do, what's it called? She wanted to do this in this movie. It's her prerogative. It is entirely her prerogative if we are going to subscribe to auteur theory of filmmaking, where it is a process by which it is the role of the director to dictate everything that happens on set. Like, if that's the case, and if that's what we are going to believe, and we're going to, you know, run a theory of filmmaking around it, fine. You know, if that's going to be the theory, but it has to be applied evenly. And I think that, like, to say that some of these movies are artisan and others aren't, it's like, the thing is, like, and even using within the same studio, like, you know, they didn't give artisan status to that other one. What was the Birds of Prey? Birds of Prey didn't get artisan status, despite being low budget and 100% the image that what's her name wanted. What was it? Kathy Yan was the name of the director. Like, Kathy Yan had a vision for that movie, and that movie got made the way she wanted. And to say that Kathy Yan didn't, you know, like, that's not an auteur, like a artisan movie in the same way that Joker is, or the Batman is, like, it just reeks of sexism. Because, like it or not, that movie is the way she wanted it. And she made the movie the way she wanted it. It came out the way she wanted it. Hell, even down to the name being unmarketable. Like, you mean to tell me that Warner Brothers didn't want to do a movie called Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey instead of Birds of Prey or The Emancipation of One Harley Quinn? Like, you really tell me that they wanted that movie to be that unruly mess of a title? You really tell me that they didn't want that movie to be PG-13 instead of rated R? Like, they gave a restriction to Matt Reeves that they did not give to Kathy Yan. And the Matt Reeves movie is an artisan movie, but Kathy Yan's isn't. Like, come the fuck on. How the fuck is that the way that this works, and one of them gets the artisan status, and the other one doesn't? Like, that just, it just boggles the mind to me that, you know, it's, you know, I'm trying to think of other movies directed by women who got the artisan status. Maybe Little Women got it. Maybe. And Little Women got fucking nitpicked to death for shit that Christopher Nolan's been doing for a decade and a half. And everyone's just like, oh, well, it's okay when Christopher Nolan does it. But now all of a sudden, now that Greta Gerwig is doing moving timelines, like, no one fucking criticized Dunkirk for being hard to follow when it followed 3 different timelines and 3 different scales of time, no less. It wasn't even 3 timelines. It was, there were 3 different scales of time where it was like a jet was going at one speed, boats were going at another speed, and what was going on the coast was an entirely different speed. That didn't get nitpicked to death by critics or nitpicked to death by audiences. It was just, it happened, and we just kind of had to live with it and accept it. And it's like, if you didn't like it, tough shit, you're in the wrong, you're too stupid to understand this movie. Like, that's a like, meanwhile, Greta Gerwig does kind of a different thing, where it's like, it's kind of the same thing, but kind of not, where, there are flashbacks over 8 years, if I remember correctly, and the movies that, and in the flashbacks and in the modern day, they don't note, like, 8 years earlier, 7 years earlier, 6 years earlier, or anything like that. It's just kind of like, you just kind of figure it out based on what's happening in the story. And it's like, it's confusing. It's like, oh, is it? If Christopher Nolan did that, you'd be praising him like he's a fucking second coming of Christ. And it's like, was Dune an artisan movie? Because Dune, like, again, that was a vision of, like, whoever did the production design of Dune, like, that should have been an artisan movie as well. Like, I don't understand, like, the criteria for being an artisan movie apparently has no basis in any, reality or any, like, easy to, check, system where it's like, okay, so this movie's artisan, this one's not. What's the difference? Not really much of one. Like, I don't know, was Dune an artisan movie at AMC? That's going to bother me now, because, like, I don't remember if Dune was an artisan movie at AMC. And I feel like it should have been, if it wasn't. But and I feel like if it's not, it will also, if it wasn't an artisan movie, it'd also throw a hole in my claim of sexism. But still, like, if we're using just within DC, and that's what it is, where it's like, if they're sticking to no big franchises, then Joker shouldn't have been that. And if it's just, well, only movies by certain things, it's like, well, was Suicide Squad? Like, Birds of Prey wasn't. I can promise you Birds of Prey wasn't. And it's like, what the fuck am I doing? Put my direction on here. There's nowhere to turn even. But there is a problem if they're just going to say that, oh, DC movies are that. And it's like, maybe the Suicide Squad was too big. Like, maybe they viewed the Suicide Squad as too corporate. And it's like, oh, this is too much like what Warner Brothers wants. So, like, maybe that's why Birds of Prey was one. But even so, it's like, you can't look at Birds of Prey and say that was not the, like, Birds of Prey happened the way it did because of Cathy Yan, for better or for worse. Eternals happened because of Chloe Zhao, for better or for worse, because of Chloe Zhao. It was their movie, they made the decisions, and they did it the way they wanted. The same way that we the Snyder cut has its, everything the way Zack Snyder wanted it. Like, and that's his movie, the way he wanted it. Like, we can't play it both ways, where it's like, oh, so, we're going to sit here and be like, well, what's the line? What is the line where something is or is not an artisan film? That's what I want to know. And I think The Batman, a movie that's 3 hours long, with the backing of a major studio and major endorsements from major companies, The Batman should not be an artisan film. I'm sorry. Like, The Joker, I could see, I will hear you out. If you want to make the case to me for why The Joker should be, like, I will listen to that, because it's a $20 million movie, and, it's an origin story, it is a deeply different take, it is, something like that. But to say that The Batman is an artisan film, it is no more than saying Iron Man is an artisan film. Like, yeah, it's a different take on the character, but so was Iron Man. And no one knew who the fuck Iron Man was in 2008 when Iron Man came out. So, yeah, we'll wrap up there for today. We'll call it a day on that. I'm tired. I'm hungry. And we will talk more about anything else that happens as it happens. So until then, have a great rest of your week.